用信用卡。
Hi, I'm Rachel. Hi, I'm Rachel. Hi, I'm Rachel. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Hi, my name is Rachel and I'm an au pair in China. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, where I graduated high school, and I'm currently working as an au pair and living abroad before going to Harvard University next fall. Before I became an au pair, I had no idea what I was signing up for, and I honestly just sort of named my way into living in China. But you should be more responsible than me and think about things before you do them. So here are 10 things to think about before becoming an au pair on every step of your journey, from getting the idea to become an au pair all the way to your first few days in China. So the first thing you should know before becoming an au pair is that you need to choose the right agency. Before I came to China, I was actually an au pair in another country where I contracted directly with my family and it worked out fine. But here in China, having an agency is an absolute no-brainer. When you're choosing an agency, you want one that has a central office in the city where you're going to live, so that they can have different activities, events, and resources directly tailored to your region of China. The second important feature to look for in your agency is you want one with a big enough staff that they'll be able to give you personalized attention, and also one that responds quickly to your questions and concerns even before you come to China, because then you know they'll be giving you a specialized attention once you get here. Having an agency is the best way to ensure that if something goes wrong in China, you'll have a group of experts who are there to help guide you with your visa troubles, your police residency requirements, or really anything else that happens. Once you've found the agency, it's also important to get your visas and travel insurance all set up. This process can differ depending on your home country, but for me, because I'm from the US, it involved doing 2 sets of paperwork, both of which my agency helped me with, which was really helpful, and then going directly to the consulate in Los Angeles, applying there, and waiting about 4 days to get my visa back. For travel insurance, I didn't actually get travel insurance myself, but I know my agency helped me get medical insurance and other types of insurance that I'll need while I'm in China, even though I don't have travel insurance itself. The second thing you should know before becoming an au pair is learning some Mandarin. You definitely don't have to be fluent in Chinese to come to China, and some au pairs come knowing no Chinese at all. But if you'll be coming in the near future, now might be a good time to download Duolingo and develop a slight addiction to getting that little green bird to be proud of you. Having the basic forms of Chinese like 你好, 谢谢, or 我是美国人,我不会说中文,请帮我 can be really helpful, especially if you don't know anything else, because it will just show people around China that you care about getting to know their culture, and it can also ensure that you don't get murdered on the street. So if you have any food restrictions or allergies or anything like that, it would be helpful to learn to say those things in Chinese, because you might have a host family or go to a restaurant where people don't speak any English, and as long as you can get the important things out in Chinese, you'll be smooth sailing. The third thing you need to know before coming to China is to download some useful apps. First and most important is WeChat. Everyone communicates on WeChat. You probably won't be texting or Snapchatting or using Facebook Messenger or anything like that. It also serves as Facebook, Snapchat, Maps, Uber, Venmo, Apple Pay, you name it. Chinese people probably do it on WeChat. The second app you need to get is called Youdao. Youdao is a really effective Chinese translator, and it'll work with both voice and typing. So if you're somewhere in the middle of the street and you need to ask someone a question, you can type it in or speak it in English or your home language, and then switch it to Chinese and have it sound from a native voice, so you can ask those questions directly. The third app you need to get is called Didi. Didi is the Chinese version of Uber. It's usually cheaper than taxis you find on the street and more reliable. And there is an English language version, which means that every single resource on there will be in English, not just poorly translated, so you can ensure that you're getting all those special features and all the things that would normally be on Uber in English. And the English language app will also help you speak to a driver in Chinese and translate directly. The fourth app you need to get is a VPN. I personally use VPN Cat on my phone and Viper VPN on my computer, but you should download at least a couple different VPNs in case one stops working. If you want to get on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of those things while you're in China, you absolutely need a VPN. Tip number 4 is understand the living expenses that you'll be facing once you're in China. If you come as an au pair, you'll probably be paid a certain amount of spending money every week or month, and that'll be meant to cover your expenses that aren't already covered by the family, which will mostly be your housing and your meals that you eat with the family. For other living expenses, China is generally pretty cheap, but it definitely varies based on where you spend your time. For example, a boba milk tea could cost anywhere from 10 to 30 RMB, and a meal you could get for as cheap as 15 RMB to as much as like hundreds and hundreds. For my living expenses, I usually try to spend under 150 to 200 RMB a week, but that's just because my host family makes really great food and I enjoy eating with them pretty much every day, and I usually will only have 1 or 2 meals outside of my house a week and like 2 to 5 boba milk teas ever. The last thing I want to say is no one in China uses cash. Pretty much everyone uses WeChat Pay or Alipay, both of which are on your phone. So to use those, however, you do need a Chinese bank account. So if you're just coming for a month or 2, you can probably just use cash and deal with the sort of dirty stares you're going to get from store owners when you do that, or you could maybe get your credit card to work in China. But if you're going to stay for longer, I really recommend applying for a bank account. I have one at the Chinese merchant bank. I don't have that much money in it, but then I can, once I had that bank account with a little bit of money set up, I could then set up a WeChat Pay account and I just get paid through WeChat Pay. I pay for everything with WeChat Pay. It is so easy. It's like Venmo, Apple Pay, and a credit card all in one. I really recommend it. Tip number 5, which is have a clear understanding of the expectations. It could be a good idea before you even get to China to establish a general work schedule, curfew, and basic responsibilities, so you can ensure that you and your host family are on the same page. At this point, I know there might be an urge to just get to China once you've decided it's your goal, but if you realize you and your host family have completely different expectations for the role of an au pair, now is the time to cut off that relationship before you're living in their house in China and things start to get really stressful. With regards to expectations, one of the most important things to know is that many families, especially in China, aren't looking for a babysitter or an English teacher. They really want someone to be an older brother or sister to their children. With that in mind, you have to know that you'll be expected to form a genuine bond with the kids, not just teach them English. You'll be expected to form a genuine bond with the kids, and you can't just view your relationship with the family as one between an employer and an employee. On the other hand, if you have certain expectations for the host family, it's important to be upfront about those as well, to ensure that they can meet them. For example, I knew that I wanted a host family that would allow me to go out and explore the city, see the culture, go out with my friends, and sometimes stay out at night, because that's one of the biggest priorities for me when coming to a new city. So I told that to my host family up front to ensure that they would be okay with that and didn't expect their au pair to be with them all the time. Luckily, my family was super understanding about that, and now we have a great relationship because we both went in knowing what those expectations were. Tip number 6, be prepared for culture shock. There are some things about China that were pretty shocking to me. For me, the biggest moments of culture shock I experienced had to do with the way cars and motorcycles get very close to you on the street, the way people will sort of spit in the street, and then also how people just like run onto the metro and will like shove people out of the way for seats. And none of those are really like necessarily bad things or necessarily worse than we do things in the US. But when I first saw all of those, I was like terrified. But now I've grown used to it, and I sort of think it's kind of an exciting way to live. It's like you're always on the edge, never know when you're going to get hit by a motorcyclist. But that kind of culture shock can definitely take you out of the joy of the experience and kind of make you wish you were back home. It's really helpful to reframe your view of your home country and just try to appreciate everything you see as its own entity rather than seeing it in comparison to what you might be used to. The 7th thing you should know before coming to China as an au pair is that you're going to need to practice open communication. Whether it's with your host family, the people at your agency, or when you're trying to practice Chinese, it's always important to communicate openly. Especially with your host family, it's really critical to keep lines of communication open to ensure that you're both still actively meeting each other's expectations instead of just doing it like in the first week. If you don't keep communicating, you could run into lots of problems, because if you're letting concerns fester until the resentment builds up, you might get to a point where you need to leave your host family over something that could have been resolved like months ago. On the flip side, you could be missing something really positive and thinking things are worse than they are. For example, I had one friend who who was convinced her host family and her host kids hated her. And she spent so much time trying to figure out how she was going to get out of the contract early and what she was going to do when she was forced to leave the country. Until one day, finally, she said to her host mom, like, "I'm so sorry you guys hate me. I'm trying to figure out how to leave and make a new plan because I know you don't want me here anymore." And her host family said, "No, we love you. We love having you as an au pair. Like, we're sorry we weren't showing it better." And after that, she ended up staying for many more months and building this great bond with her host family. But because she was so nervous about having open lines of communication, that was almost lost. That is tip number 8. Be proactive in asking for help. You are going to run into some problems when you're in China. You're in a new country and you're probably pretty young, so you aren't expected to know everything. Do your best to learn to be okay with not knowing things. I know when I first got here, I was so stressed and felt so bad whenever I had to ask for help. But honestly, no one expects you to be perfect, and you're in a really stressful situation, so it's okay that you're going to make some mistakes or have some pretty big questions. The most important part of that process, though, is learning when you need to ask for help and how to ask. Don't suffer in silence. If you're lost, confused, scared, or struggling in any way, there's probably someone who is willing and able to help you if you just ask for it. But even if you don't have someone like that, like I said, the people at your agency or your host family will probably be happy to help you out as long as you take that step to be proactive and ask them for what you need. Tip number 9 is lean into being out of your comfort zone. If you're able to embrace these challenges as a chance to grow, you'll have a much better time here. New experiences are chances for you to grow and develop as a person. And at the end of your time abroad, you'll look back on the times when you were most challenged as the moments when you became the type of person who could overcome those challenges. That sentence didn't really make any sense, so let me give you an example. I'm from a city without really any public transit, so I was not at all used to negotiating a subway system, bus lines, or anything like that. When I first moved abroad, I got on the wrong train so many times, and I missed my trains or got lost or ended up in super weird neighborhoods like almost every day. And there was one particular moment when I remember standing at the bus station with no idea when my bus was coming, no idea if I was getting on the right bus, and I just stood there and cried because I was so stressed and so sure that I couldn't handle this. And I just desperately wanted to call someone from back home and have them come fix the situation for me. I was so worried that when I finally did figure out the right bus, figured out how to use the language I needed to use to get there, and ultimately made it home safely on my own, that I realized that I am actually able to handle a public transit system and able to speak a foreign language better than I thought I could. But it was only because I was so challenged and pushed more than I expected to be that I was able to make those realizations for myself. Tip number 10 is try your best to have a positive attitude. A negative attitude can make the greatest parts of living in a foreign country seem not that good, and a positive attitude can make even the biggest challenges seem worthwhile. Do your best to find the joy in every part of this amazing experience and opportunity, and I promise even the not so fun parts, like the fact that public toilets in China don't usually have toilet paper, will be worth it. At the end of the day, getting to live abroad, especially when you're pretty young, is something you're going to remember for the rest of your life.